please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Okay, konnichiwa, ohayo gozaimasu. There's only two markets open, excuse me. That's one market, by the way, okay, not two markets. Nikkei 225, 20,660, so just a little bit ahead of what the futures market was giving us their indication for wider topics index. And watch this one too. Watch this one, because we talk about the Nikkei 225 as if 225 companies define what is Japan in this day and age. But again, you have a market here which is, still chugging along, even though it's at I think it's at 2-year highs or something like that. I forget. I can't. Bernie's getting old. Can't remember standing here in front of a thing. But the small caps, just like the Russell 2000 and the Wilshire 4000, 5000. This is our proxy, okay, in oversimplified terms for the wider market. So when you hear me increasingly in the months to come talking about the Tokyo TSE second section and the topics, it's because there might be more momentum here, especially now that politics is in play. We've been in Abe land for years, but looks like if the gods have their way, that Koike may be a player, may change things up a little bit. ASX. I was trying to give them time to actually get moving. That's why I dragged on so long, but no go. ASX 200 off 31 points. So let's get to Matt and find out. Matt, our good friend Gav Perry from Perry International Trading gave me the real reason for the change in clocks, and you can confirm or non-confirm this, but okay. He says that was created during. During Prohibition in Australia, so men weren't walking in the early wee hours of the morning or something like that. It had to do with Prohibition. I don't exactly understand the rhyme and reason, but is that true? Do you know that? Is that what you learned in Australian history in year 11 in secondary school?
No, that is not what I learned at all, but I'll find out for you and I'll let you know if there is any truth to that. Let's give you a look at the market. We've been up and running now for over an hour. As Bernie showed you, the ASX 200 is under some pressure. We're off by about 0.5%, 29 points weaker, 56.72 on the broader all odds, 57.37 down by 27. Aussie dollar 78.36. We of course had the RBA out yesterday. The currency succumbed below 78 US cents on the back of the statement we got out from the RBA, but we've now managed to rebound over that, suggesting that policy would remain steady for a little while longer. Of course, they also warned about financial stability, high household debt, and that's been something that the IMF has echoed overnight as well, warning that high household debt could leave pretty bad hangover. Speaking of prohibition, a pretty bad hangover in Australia. Household debt to GDP here is at 190%, and the IMF warns that the scenario could lead to a banking crisis if the economy does suffer some kind of shock. Take a look at how the banking stocks are doing. We've got a negative session for the majors today. The worst performer is the ANZ, off by about 1.3%. Bernie, back to you.
Okay, go hit the dusty history books and find out if Prohibition led to the clock change. I want to know. I want to know. Drivers in hurricane states, God, don't ever call it hurricane hit states, getting new rides because, as our next guest taught me, if your car is flooded with the modern electronics in it, your car is shot. It's not like you can blow out the carburetor, dry it out and make it good. And Mother Nature, through her fury and rage, forced many to replace those cars. Toyota and GM among the biggest gainers. Dan is here with more on that. And Dan, I have to say, it seems so un-American, doesn't it, for Toyota to be at the top of the pack? However, no, that's not true. Toyota is actually an American car company. They've been manufacturing in Kentucky for decades now. They're as American as apple pie, baseball, and Chevrolet. Okay, that last analogy could have been better.
I'll touch on Toyota sales in just a moment, but let's have a look at the broader picture, Bernie, because after months of disappointment in the auto sales market, we've seen Americans really come back to those car yards in the month of September, and they have been buying up big. Remember, only a few months ago, we were talking about the peak of the cycle when it came to US auto sales. Well, that appears to be showing at least some signs of resistance in the aftermath of these latest numbers. So total sales crossed at 18.57 million vehicles. That's the strongest month that we've seen this year for US auto sales, because an estimated 800,000 to 1 million vehicles were destroyed by hurricanes in both Texas and in Florida. So storm victims were eager to get out there and use that insurance money to buy replacement cars and trucks. Analysts also say that this is a perfect mix of hurricane replacement demand, high incentives, surging fleet sales and high inventories, and that's really helped to move cars out of the car yard. So we saw much stronger than expected sales in September for Toyota, as you mentioned, GM and also Ford. So for example, Ford's F-Series sale surged 20% just last month alone. GM saw record demand for its crossovers, and Toyota's SUV sales also saw significant gains. And if you have a look at the numbers for the month of September, GM up almost 12%, Ford up almost 9%, and Toyota surging around 15%, Bernie. So the key question at this juncture is whether or not this momentum can be maintained. Let's bring in Joe Langley at IHS Market Insights. We asked him earlier today whether or not this is going to continue. Listen in.
I think we'll see a bit of a drop-off in the coming months, but overall we're still looking for a strong fourth quarter as we still want to replace those vehicles that were lost, and we could even expect some residual into the first quarter as well in terms of replacing vehicles. Then we're also moving into the kind of end-of-year selling season as well. So we're, November and December are typically a bit stronger as business and consumers look to get that vehicle before the end of the year.
So he seems quite optimistic on the forward outlook, but here's the thing. Those factors that have really driven to higher auto sales over the past 12 months and beyond, like low interest rates and low fuel prices stateside, could also be showing signs of reversal. So the question is, will those factors outweigh the more bullish factors, which are those higher consumer confidence levels and also increasing levels of employment in the US, Bernie? Certainly a mixed picture moving forward. Back over to you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this. I guess. I mean, it was the hurricane was horrible, and the impact on people just unspeakable. But kind of manna from heaven for the car makers, at least, getting rid of that buildup in inventory. It was approaching 3 months at GM. All right. Thanks, Dan. Speaking of cars, Uber laying out some new rules of the road and approving a multi-billion-dollar investment from Masayoshi Son. Akiko is here with much more on that. Akiko, just when you and I thought that Uber was getting its act together, I mean, Dara's at the helm. Travis was booted to the back because of his, personality problems. What does he do? He appoints, John Thain and Ursula Burns to the board. The company goes, what the? You fill in the blank. And I don't know. And then we got this Masayoshi Son investment. It's looking like a party house or a frat house again, isn't it?
Oh, well, there's no question. It's certainly been a busy day for Uber. To put it lightly there, it began with the new CEO, Derek Khosrowshahi, meeting with London's transport minister to try and reverse the ban on the ride-hailing service there. And then now we're talking about this board meeting with the company shaking up its governance rules and then voting to allow SoftBank to invest in the company. Let's begin with the specifics on this SoftBank deal, because Reuters reporting SoftBank will, with investors that include Dragoneer Investment and General Atlantic, would look to buy $1 billion to $1.25 billion of new Uber shares with a valuation of $69 billion. The group would also purchase 14 to 17% of stock from current investors at a discounted valuation. Now, if this deal goes through, Uber would expand the size of the board from 11 directors to 17. 2 of those seats controlled by SoftBank. The other seats would go to 3 independent directors and an independent chairperson. Now, the board also agreed to a 1 share, 1 vote provision, which would strip all super voting shareholders. These are the earliest backers of Uber of their extra votes and effectively tip the balance of power away from founder and former CEO Travis Kalanick. Uber releasing a statement saying the board's decision and the governance changes would strengthen its independence and ensure equality among all shareholders. But early investors like Shervin Peshawar, the founder of Sherpa Capital and a close Kalanick ally, vowing to file a class action lawsuit prior to this vote, saying if the vote went through, he would move forward. Take a listen to what he said.
The board of directors of the company cannot be a clown car operation. This has been an amateur hour to watch everything unfold by the company. And as a shareholder investor, we have to hold them accountable for their actions. They have a fiduciary duty to do their job and protect the shareholders and the employees and their rights. And frankly, in my opinion, they're failing at that task.
Now, following that vote, Peshawar releasing a statement to our partners over at Recode saying the board's actions today was unfair and illegal. He says he will move forward with a class action lawsuit saying we will hold these people accountable under the law. Bernie, one more thing to note from this board meeting, the board setting a 2019 deadline for an IPO. Certainly looks like Travis Kalanick is on board with this. There is a statement here coming into Recode as well, saying that under Dara's leadership and with strong guidance from the board, we should expect great things ahead for Uber, but expect a legal fight from these early investors who have lost their super voting shares there.
With this, Akiko, with this factionalizing going on now, I mean, it's widening. It's getting wider and wider and deeper at the same time. I mean, the fundamental issue of Uber being allowed to operate, I mean, the simplest question of all, in specific jurisdictions, isn't that the battle that they're supposed to be fighting? Because this comes at a time when Lyft is gaining some momentum, and then the homegrown indigenous names like Grab and Go and others, you know, in Southeast Asia. I mean, the more time you fight inside, the less attention you have to pay to the outside.
Well, Bernie, I don't know if I would characterize it as widening here because, you know, on the one hand, you've got these early investors who are saying, yes, they're going to move forward with the class action lawsuit. At the same time, now Benchmark, who was in favor of these changes, coming forward and saying they're willing to drop this legal fight against Travis Kalanick if this SoftBank deal goes through and the shakeups happen on the governance side of things. So you could certainly argue that one side is satisfied. They're saying, okay, we're going to drop our fight if the SoftBank deal goes through and these changes happen. And then you've got another side now coming into the fight saying, wait a second, we're not okay with what's happening here as well. So you're right. At the same time, they're still dealing with the issue over in London. Dara Khosrowshahi trying to play nice with the regulators over in London to say, please let us continue operating. Uber certainly looks like they're fighting a battle on two fronts here.
You inspired me to finally try Uber because of our time together last week and everything. And I have to say, it was very nice. The car was very clean, and the price was about a taxi price. So there was nothing to lose there. However, he was such a new driver. This Uber driver, I had to actually guide him the whole way from the moment I got into the car. Like left here, yeah, no, left, like left at the Y, yeah, then a slight right, yeah. And it's like I thought to myself, gee, I should have just kept the car at this rate.
You should become an Uber driver yourself. You know, I've had to do that with taxi drivers here in Singapore as well. So I guess you win some and you lose some.
Gee, Akiko, I thought you, thanks, such a vote of confidence in my anchoring skills on TV. I'm going to go to, she wants me to go to Uber. When we come back, our next guest warns that North Korea is the biggest threat to his investment outlook, but he's still long South Korean stocks. Now, how does he do that? Wow. Why is he betting on Seoul next? Okay, we've got, of course, an abbreviated kind of a week with the Chuseok Festival in South Korea and the Mid-Autumn Festival in China, Golden Week. Hong Kong off for a couple days, but the rest of the market's forging ahead, and the Nikkei is in the green, 26 points there, 20,640, and then the Aussie market just can't get ahead of itself. With the deadline for the U.S. to recertify the Iran nuclear deal rapidly approaching, a key member of the Trump cabinet has weighed in with his 2 cents. Defense Secretary General Mattis saying that Washington should stick with the accord unless Tehran breaks the terms of the agreement.
If we can confirm that Iran is living by the agreement, if we can determine that this is in our best interest, then clearly we should stay with it. I believe at this point in time, absent indications to the contrary, it is something the president should consider staying with.
Mattis also dismissed concerns about a split between President Trump and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson over the issue of North Korea. Kingsley Jones is founder and CIO at Jevons Global and joins us from Sydney. Good to have you with us, Kingsley. North Korea is a concern, isn't it? I mean, it's quiet right now, but it only takes one missile shot to change the dynamics and get the whole world scared once again. How worried are you in terms of the effect on the market?
Yeah, well, look, obviously it's a big concern, Bernie. In terms of our positioning, I have to say we've got our bull market goggles on right now. I mean, this is a strong market, and we do like South Korean stocks. So, we have positions in Samsung Electronics and we in KB Financial, Worry Bank, and we do like the South Korean story. Exports are improving. However, there's still, of course, the risk that things go become quite difficult on the Korean Peninsula. No one wants to see a war, I don't think. But, of course, the Twitter amplified rhetoric from both the President of the United States and also Kim Jong-un makes it difficult. So, look, the bottom line, Bernie, is we're in there right now. We're long. But we're, of course, keeping a watchful eye on the implied volatilities and index put option prices, should we need to put a hedge on in Korea to protect our positions.
What has you enamored with South Korea and companies like Samsung and some of the financials, which we'll talk a little more in detail about? Is there really an improvement in corporate performance, corporate governance, and return on investment?
It's all a question of price, Bernie. I mean, obviously, it's a work in progress to improve corporate governance in South Korea. Of course, Samsung Electronics is one of the, shall we say, poster children for when it goes wrong. But notwithstanding all of that, as investors, you really just have to step up and look at what the price of the securities is versus what risks there may be. Now, we think that South Korea is moving in the right direction, both in terms of corporate governance, and it's most definitely moving in the right direction economically. So that satisfies us that for the time being, it's definitely a good place to be invested. And we're mildly overweight South Korea. We're not hugely overweight, but we believe that Asia generally is picking up, and that's what's attracted us to this investment.
Right, and you mentioned Samsung. Does it go beyond Samsung? KEB there, I think we started listing some of the names there worth a mention. KEB and Worry Bank of the financial. What do the financials have going for them? Yeah, are they in a rate hike environment?
Well, look, yeah, of course, but let's remember, Bernie, that oftentimes, can I put it this way? It's a long time since we've had a normal cycle, and this cycle of recovery that we're seeing in emerging markets looks to us much like a normal cycle. We have rate rises, we have a steepening yield curve, but that's all pro-growth. We have rising commodity prices, and as you saw with US autos, although it was partly hurricane related, those numbers are firm. So we're actually expecting stronger conditions right around the world, and we expect that the economy will improve even as rates are rising.
Right. And this week is Golden Week in China, of course, and then later on in the month we've got this big Congress that everybody's waiting for. What happens after the Congress in the context of China, Kingsley? Does Xi Jinping solidify his power and steer the country's economic might in the right direction? That's how the narrative goes.
Look, Bernie, as far as China's concerned, we haven't really been much invested in the Chinese story for some time. It's only this year that we've come back into Hong Kong, like I think a lot of international investors, because the market was really cheap. And we got over our fear that it was all going to collapse in a banking crisis. I think the issues that you mentioned about Xi Jinping strengthening power, it certainly looks to me like that's his mission, at least in terms of his own position. We'll have to see what happens with the Congress. Of course, our fear would be that China becomes too authoritarian and too much a kind of, a one-party state under the control of a single individual. I don't think that's going to happen, but obviously we need to be careful about that. I think the bright part in this whole story is the oddly named One Belt, One Road mission. And if the new authority that Xi Jinping might win for the purpose of that project were to come through, I think that's probably good for a whole bunch of countries in the region and around the world. And we're quite positive about the prospects for improved growth as a result of that.
Excellent. Kingsley, always great chatting with you. Have a good rest of the week. Kingsley Jones, Jevons Global, joining us from Sydney. As we head to break, here's a look at some of the big movers in the Tokyo session. We'll be right back.
influential business leaders and policymakers will get together in New Delhi to talk India and chart out the course for the global economy. CNBC TV18 is proud to partner with the World Economic Forum to bring you the India Economic Summit. From reforms to rates, manufacturing to skills, digitization to inclusion, there's going to be plenty of food for thought. Get a seat at the high table as CNBC TV18 gets you inside access to the India Economic Summit. Stimulating conversations, powerful interviews, news breaks and a lot more. CNBC TV18, the first in business worldwide.
At these times, only on CNBC TV18.
Presented by LIC of India. Zindagi ke saath bhi, zindagi ke baad bhi. Co-presented by Transitions, Live the Good Light. Powered by Union Bank of India. Good people to bank with.
From identifying the movers and shakers of the week to spotting new trends as they develop, we get you all the buzz in the commodity market and help you connect commodity to the company. Let the biggest champions guide your investments and find out on what to expect in the week ahead.
The Commodity Champions. At these times, only on CNBC TV18.
Commodity Champions, brought to you by Nakshatra Diamond Jewelry.
The Monetary Policy Committee faces the most challenging economic scenario since its inception. Growth is falling rapidly, inflation is rising slowly. As for the twin deficit, current account deficit has shot up and fiscal deficit looks all set to rise. In the face of all this, there is a clamor for rate cuts from several quarters, as well as fiscal stimulus. What will the Monetary Policy Committee do, and what will it say? And what impact will it have on growth, on markets, on your investments, and your job? Watch the RBI Monetary Policy live from Mint Street. To find out how it will impact your loans, savings, and investments, along with instant analysis from a host of experts. RP Sanjeev Goenka Group presents the RBI Monetary Policy at these times, only on CNBC TV18.
Presented by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, Growing Legacies. In association with Union Bank of India, good people to bank with.
Blogger, tweeter, and when I get home, / a dad. For me, business was always sort of the new politics.
And another one of America's big banking bosses weighs in on Bitcoin. Ooh, that's a lot of fancy alliteration there. Goldman's CEO, Lloyd Blankfein, says he's keeping an open mind on the cryptocurrency, tweeting, no conclusion, not endorsing or projecting. You know, folks, we were skeptical when paper money displaced gold. That is true. Blankfein's comments come less than a month after JPM's chief, Jamie Dimon, slammed Bitcoin, calling it a bigger fraud than tulip bulbs. You know what happened to those tulip bulbs. And Lloyd, if you can handle the volatility, you go right ahead. Snapchat continuing to feel the competitive threat from Instagram, especially from people who take pictures of their food. In newly published research, marketing firm MediaKick said a 6-month study showed top influencers were posting 34% less to Snapchat and 14% more to Insta stories. Speaking to us at the Vanity Fair Summit, Snap CEO Evan Spiegel said he would continue to stay focused on the business and deliver results. Spiegel also talked about going public and how he may not have fully grasped the need for clear communication with investors.
One of the things I did underestimate was, how much more important communication becomes. And what's really interesting is that, when you go public and you really need to explain to a huge new investor base, right? Instead of having 10 investors, you have 10,000. You have to explain how your business works. And at the same time that you need to do that, there are also all these new regulations about, what you can and can't say and how you can communicate. And so I think one of the things we've been going through this year is learning how to best communicate the Snap story.
A reminder to you kids, if you go on Snapchat because you think your pictures will disappear, nothing ever really disappears. Nothing naughty. Coming up, Yahoo just can't seem to catch a break. Give me a break. The company revealing its 2013 data breach was way bigger than originally thought. It even got me. We talk safety in the cyber world.